When we are considering the properties that we are observing, again, this is in the analysis phase, so we're still trying to understand the behaviors and the information that is lying before you go home and begin designing. The zones of use we'll get into in much more detail, but these are a tool that we look at to place elements appropriately. Now, in this stage, however, we're using it in the opposite sense. We are observing elements and their frequency of use, and then identifying if they are in a zone that is appropriate. You see that chicken coop? You know, people hate the smell of the chicken manure at the end of the winter because they just can't clean it out most of the winter and it gets really an ammonia smell and not really nice. So they want to put the chickens far away from the house, right? So chickens are in zone 3, a good distance from the house. Well, if you're out there in a property like that and you see that the chickens are ill and they're not producing a good amount of eggs and the building's a bit dilapidated, that building is too far. They're not able to do the daily maintenance that's required because you do actually have to go to your chicken coop twice a day. So, there are elements where people have this idea that they know better because they don't want that thing near their house or they don't want that thing visible. And I've had a client who specifically wanted the compost bin. My friend who does most of the cooking, she was there and he had a specific need, her partner, to have the compost pile far away from the house. He had this beautiful spot. He would walk for about a minute every morning when he put the compost out through these blackberry paths and then put the compost in the bin. It was far from the house so it didn't smell. And I was looking at that and I'm like, this is at the edge of zone 2. This is a bit far from the house for a compost. How many times a day do you use a compost? Right? We put compost in it at least in the morning from last night's dinner or the night of your cooking, and sometimes twice a day. Right? So you're accessing this very frequently. There's obviously a spot somewhere closer to the house that could work. And he said, no, 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 no. Design everything else. Leave the compost to me. I got this figured out. A month or two later, my friend calls me up and she says, listen, where were you going to put the compost? Because this compost pile, it gets destroyed by the raccoons because no one's ever out there all day long and the raccoons smell the compost and they're literally ripping boards off. He's had to fix the compost pile 4 times this month, the wooden box. And then he's also goes for his minute walk in the morning to drop the compost, and sometimes later on in the day I'll find the bin of compost sitting in the middle of the blackberries because the blackberries had overgrown the path, and so he had to go back to the house to get shears and then came and started pruning blackberries, and that took until about lunch, and then he took a lunch break and forgot about the compost and the blackberries, and it just never happened. And so you understand zones of use is not like an ideal thing. It's not just like, oh, I'd like to have the compost closer to the home. It's that if you don't have the compost close to the home, the fact of the matter is that you will access it less frequently. You will be less apt to maintain it. You will have low quality compost. You will have a degrading compost pile, and the system will cause more work and cause a lower productivity and a lower result of what you're originally intending. So the zones of use are really adhering to what's called friction of distance. The further something is away from you, the less you will maintain it, the less you will frequent it, the less you will see problems that are happening on the daily basis. And so there are certain elements like chickens that need to be on the edge, the zone 1 edge of zone 2, and compost, which absolutely needs to be in the zone 1. Unless, of course, you're doing like large scale windrow composting, which is a whole other story. But the idea here is that when we look at a property, when we're doing observation of a property, we want to walk around, we want to look at the elements that exist and their current frequency of access, and is there a problem? Are they too far? Are we going to benefit? Yes, it's a bit of work to move a compost pile, but the work that will be saved in rebuilding that box all the time and having actual good quality compost instead of something that's stinky and putrid, which isn't even compost, it's really worth it in the end. So that's part of your observational task, is to identify the existing zone placement of certain things. And we're not going for like, oh, zone 1 is 10 meters from the door. It's about the frequency. You could have something right around the corner from the door, but it's just an awkward place to go to that is actually zone 3, but it's really close to the door. So frequency of access and accessibility go hand in hand. If there aren't good paths, if it's a rocky terrain that you can roll your ankle on, well, as you get older, you're going to go less and less down that path. So these are factors to consider, and they are important observations to make and to capture before you leave your client's property.